I am a Christian myself, so
Sure.
I am here because I owe it to one of my Muslim friends. I made this promise many years ago.
Yes.
I was working with this Muslim friend, and we were having all kind of debates. And I was trying to convince him about Christianity, and he was trying to convince me about Islam.
Okay.
But his English was not very good, and he always encouraged me, like, go on YouTube, the Muslim Lantern, you know. So he told me to join your live, and then hopefully you will help me better, I guess.
All right.
But, yeah, so I don't really have questions. I am a quite confident Christian. So I don't know if there is anything you can say. So you would want me to read?
Okay. Let me ask you one question. Let me ask you one question, because this is something it's called the Christian dilemma, you know, that I've been presenting recently quite a bit, you know. So I want to hear your thoughts on the Christian dilemma. Let's ask this question. You're a Christian. What is the scripture that you follow that you believe is from God?
The New Testament.
That's it? You don't follow the Old Testament?
I do, but it doesn't apply when it comes down to the theological implications of it. I do follow. I do believe in the Old Testament.
You realize that you cannot really prove that. You realize you cannot really prove the New Testament without the Old Testament, right? You cannot prove the prophecies that use about the Messiah, the original sin. All of that is in the Old Testament. So Christians, they pick and choose. I see, honestly, sadly, when it comes to the Old Testament, when they don't like a part, they're like, "Oh, I follow the New Testament." But you use it when it benefits you, like when it comes to the Messiah or the prophecies or all of these things. You use it very happily. So you can't pick and choose. And Allah says that in the Quran to the people of the book. Do you believe in parts of the book and disbelieve in others? So you don't pick and choose conveniently what you want to believe in and what you don't want to believe in, okay? So the question is, if this is a scripture that you use to learn about God, here's the hypothetical question. If that scripture is corrupted, completely corrupted and has been changed in so many different ways, like we're talking about very significant, deep changes, how can you rely on it for your salvation?
Well, I guess the idea is for me to say now, like, it's not been corrupted, and then you'll give me the reason for why it has been corrupted. Sure. The thing is.
No, we're just first assuming if it was. If it was, would you then leave Christianity?
It would be a big issue, yeah.
Would you leave Christianity, or is it just a big issue?
Well, I believe so. I will give you an example. I do believe in New Testament. There are some things in which I'm not taking the position of let's say the typical Christian who would say there's nothing in it, not even one word or not one instance in which, you know, something was like it's not perfect. So for example, you have some of the apostles kind of like having a go with each other, and they have differences in the way they would approach a situation. So in that sense, it's not perfect, and there are some words that they use that maybe does not match with each other, but the main story and the fundamental highlights of the theology, I do believe, is consistent.
Yeah, but we're not asking about consistency, because now when you say that the scribes are disagreeing with each other in the text, you're assuming that the text is still reliable, because you're assuming when it says Paul said this and James said this and he was correcting Paul, that these instances are reliable. No, we are saying if the scripture itself being reliable, i.e. historically reliable, that the information in it is truth or not true, or is it corrupted and changed? So I'm going to ask the question again. I want you to kind of give me the answer. If that scripture is being corrupted, meaning that people added words to it, changed words from it, subtracted words from it, so basically you no longer can be 100% sure what is from God and what is not from God. Would you leave Christianity if this was the case?
If it comes down to the main theology, and then I don't have a clear way of telling what is the story of the Bible, then
if
yes.
If it's corrupted to the extent I'm telling you, you don't have a main theology, because it's a corrupted book that has different teachings. So you cannot determine what's right from wrong for you to have a theology that you say, oh, this is the main theology.
Okay, so if it comes down to yes, so if it comes down to that, when I cannot tell what's wrong,
because you get the theology from the scripture. So if the scripture is corrupted, You cannot use the term main theology because you don't have something original, so you can get the main theology from to begin with.
I understand what you're saying. So if it comes down to that fundamental level of not knowing what is wrong, right or wrong, then yeah, I would let's say leave Christianity. I would find it problematic. It's just that I know there are more than 5,000 copies of manuscripts about what the original text of the Bible said. You know, so I am quite confident historically. I have a good case that the Bible is reliable.
Okay, let me first ask. Okay, let's get into this then. Okay, let me first ask you, when you say the original Bible, what do you mean by that? Original scripture? What original are you talking about?
So the writings that historically we can date back to decades of the life of Jesus and the apostles. Historically,
but
we have writings.
Jesus didn't write anything down.
No, the eyewitnesses that wrote about Jesus's life and the apostles.
Who's the eyewitnesses? Who's the eyewitnesses?
So first, the apostles.
Yeah, right? which apostles that you have the writings? Which ones?
So we know about Luke. We know about Paul.
Okay. Well, Paul never met Jesus when he was walking on earth ever in his life. He just made a claim about. So he's not someone reliable for you to come and say, I'm going to base my religion on this person who never met Jesus, who just made a claim that when he was going to Damascus, he saw a vision. I mean, I can make the same claim. So Paul is not what we're talking about now. We're talking about Jesus, right? Where the entire religion comes from, the creed and theology comes from. Paul comes later on after things have already been established. Who do you have writings from that
Matthew, Mark.
Okay,
John.
Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. Okay, the Gospel of Matthew, the consensus of all textual criticism scholars, the people who are Christian, who are Orthodox, and the people who are skeptical, all of them agree that Matthew did not write the book of Matthew. Who else do you have?
Matthew, Mark, John.
Yeah, John is the latest written gospel. It's the latest written one, way later on.
Okay.
So it wasn't written by the disciple John. So you have Mark. Do you know who Mark was?
So let's disregard all of them and focus on John. So John was the letters of John. Historically, as far as I know, they were written sometimes.
Are you talking about the Gospel of John or talking about the letters? These are two separate things.
Well, I'm not sure exactly. I think that the Gospel came first, and then the letters. He wrote the letters later on.
Yeah, John. Do you know the difference between the Synoptic Gospels and John? The Synoptic Gospels, they have the same theme, the same story. John, all scholars will tell you, is he's writing his own beliefs, his own theology. He's writing all of these statements that are, let's say, fan fiction, you know? Why? Because if it is true that Jesus said, for instance, all of these statements in John that are crazy statements that Christians use all the time, it's impossible that you have Mark, Matthew, and Luke, and none of them is going to record any of these statements. They're going to record the whole entire history and life of Jesus, and they're going to leave all what, quote unquote, they say the I am statements and all of this stuff. Not a single one of them the recording, which shows us that whoever wrote John, which, as I said, is the latest gospel, doesn't fit with the synoptic gospel idea, which all are aligned with each other. By the way, Matthew copies 90% of Mark. Matthew copies 90% of Mark. And that is the evidence. And by the way, Luke, majority of Luke copies, by the way, Mark as well. That's why you cannot say that the Gospel of Matthew. I'm sorry, do you disagree with what I'm saying?
Well, to me, it comes down to the idea that the fact that you have similar information, or if somebody doesn't mention exactly what the one of them did, it's a good enough reason to reject the whole their whole writing. To me, that's not like.
We're not talking about rejecting the whole writing. We're talking about the fact that these people are closer in writings. Their earlier gospels, they're all recording the life of Jesus when he was walking on earth, what he said, all of his teachings. And you have importance of information that you record. If Jesus factually, historically made these statements, it would be the first thing circulating and the first thing for you to record. The fact is that all of the earlier writers, the ones that are closer in the writing, none of them records these statements. That's why the scholars are taking this position that you have this idea of the synoptic gospels. This is not, by the way, this is what all scholars believe in. And then you have John, and he was writing his theology and what he believed in. There's a big difference between this and that. But anyways, that doesn't matter anyways, because it doesn't influence the argument that I'm making. The argument I'm making is still there. Matthew copies 90% of Mark. Luke copies the majority of Mark. They copy word for word. You can open
90%. You said Matthew copies 90%.
Matthew, copies like 90% or over of Mark, word for word copy what Mark says. Luke copy a lot of Luke is copying word for word again what Mark is saying. Now, what the scholars say, this is one of the clear evidences the scholars use. They say that the Gospel of Matthew was absolutely not written by Matthew, because you know who Mark was. Mark allegedly is a student of Peter. Again, someone who wasn't a disciple of Jesus. Okay? So Matthew, if he was the direct disciple of Jesus, he wouldn't go and copy from someone who was born later on, who was a student of Peter. It's impossible. He was eyewitness. He lived with Jesus. If he lived with Jesus, he's going to write what he saw Jesus doing. He's not going to copy later on from a kid that came later on that was a student of Peter. It's one of the main evidences they use. Also, you can see the Gospel of Matthew, when it talks about Matthew, it speaks in the third person. So, for example, Matthew chapter 9, verse 9 says, and Jesus met a tax collector called Matthew. He didn't say, and Jesus met me. And Jesus said this to me, and I said this to Jesus. You can clearly tell that whoever is writing this is not the disciple Matthew. So all of them will tell you that things are tracing back to the Gospel of Mark. Okay, the Gospel of Mark. Who is the writer of the Gospel of Mark? The answer is the writer of the Gospel of Mark is anonymous, with the agreement of all textual criticism scholars. The writer of the Gospel of Matthew is anonymous. The writer of the Gospel of Luke is anonymous. The writer of the Gospel of John is anonymous. All the writers of the 4 Gospels are anonymous, people who are unknown. If you wanna look this up, I think you're trying to do that. You're welcome to do that if you want.
No. I realized my mouse pad was on, so I didn't want to
no worries. I thought if you wanted, you could. But here's what I'm saying. So the writers of the Gospels are all anonymous. They're unknown people. Okay. So we have unknown people writing something. What is the earliest manuscript you have of the New Testament?
Well, here is what it comes down to: the ability of, because I'm not a scholar myself, so I do know some of the arguments. I might not be the best to present them in a clear way, but I know we have writings in historically, and I've heard the arguments about being within the first few decades. So we have writings.
Okay, can I tell you what scholars say then? Okay, sure, perfect. Now, I'm going to tell you this. You're welcome to right now search the names I'm going to give you, okay? Daniel B. Wallace. Can you read for me how important is that person?
He's an American professor of New Testament studies at Dallas Theological Seminary. He's also the founder and executive director of the Center of the Study of New Testament manuscripts.
Mm-hmm. That's it? Does it not have anything else? Does it not talk about him revising, for example, translations of the Bible, like the RSV and stuff like this?
That's the short version, like I guess.
Oh, the summary. Yeah, okay. No worries. So can you ask the question, is Daniel B. Wallace someone who defends the Bible, or is he a skeptical scholar? Like, is he a conservative one? Like, by the way, he's the leading scholar for textual criticism, for defense of the Bible, for conservative Christians. So I'm bringing you the scholars that are on your side. I'm not going to bring you the skeptical scholars.
So the thing is, like, I know generally when it comes to scholars, you have people that are educated at this level that are taking a skeptical position or are against the case of the Bible. But generally, as far as I'm concerned, generally they do acknowledge that the writings are reliable. Now, not everybody believes like the theological implications of them.
We're going to get We're going to get into what they say, right? But first, I'm helping you. Look, there's 2 groups of scholars. Okay, there is skeptical scholars. These are people like Bart Ehrman. Have you heard of Bart Ehrman before? Yeah. So I don't use Bart Ehrman with you, because Bart Ehrman is someone who used to be Christian, became agnostic. You're going to be like, this guy's not Christian. No worries. I'm not going to use a skeptical scholar. An example is like David C. Parker is another example. I'm not going to use these people. Okay. I'm using with you now. By the way, Daniel Wallace argues debates against Bart Ehrman to prove the Bible. So he's your side. He is a conservative scholar. So you have the skeptical and the conservatives. I'm giving you now the number 1 conservative scholar defender of the Bible, Daniel B. Wallace. You can also Google Bruce Metzger. Who's Bruce Metzger? By the way, he was the mentor of Daniel B. Wallace. Bruce Metzger.
World-renowned expert in New Testament textual criticism.
World-renowned, yeah.
Okay. Spent his he spent his career as a professor at Princeton Theological Seminary. He served as the chair of committee of the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible and was long-time editor. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to Google who Philip Comfort is? I put for you another name. So these are the three, let's say, leading scholars defending the Bible and textual criticism, Christianity. These are the conservative ones, okay? These are the ones that argue that, we can perhaps maybe restore the original text. These are the people who are, helping you. Now, let's talk about what Daniel B. Wallace says, okay? Daniel B. Wallace says, every single manuscript we have of the Bible is corrupted. And by the way, there's hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of manuscripts. He says, every single manuscript we have of the Bible is corrupted. There is not any perfect manuscripts. We have to look at these manuscripts as corrupt documents and try to come up with the understanding of what the original text perhaps may have been. Daniel B. Wallace tells you every single manuscripts contradict each other. They're not only all corrupted, but they're all contradicting each other. And Daniel Wallace tells you that these manuscripts it's not the new manuscripts. He says, if you go the earliest manuscripts we have, all of them contradict each other. Okay? So that's the first thing that Daniel B. Wallace says to you. What is the second thing that Daniel B. Wallace says? Daniel B. Wallace talks about corruption of the Bible, okay? What are the types of corruption? What are the types of variants, the corruptions that we have in these manuscripts? He categorizes them into the 5 different types, okay? All right? He talks about addition, where you add, omission, where you remove from text, okay? And substitution, where you substitute. Then when he talks about addition and omission, he says this can range from 1 word to 12 verses. You realize how much 1 word can change in the meaning, let alone 12 verses. And then he says we have 2 instances already in the New Testament where we have corruption of 12 verses. Already, we have an example, 2 places in the New Testament where this occurs. Of course, one is in Mark, the ending of Mark, and the other is in John, at the end of chapter 7 and the beginning of chapter 8. These are 12 verses, clear instance of 12 verses are completely corruption that are added into scripture, okay? So he tells us about this. And then he says, what is then a corruption? What is a variant? He says some people, they think that a variant is like the word Jesus and the word Lord. And if we have 1,000 the word Jesus and 1,000 the Lord words, then we have 1,000 variants. Or it's like the word Jesus and O's, for example, O instead of J or something like that. Then he says, no. If we have 1,000 manuscripts that says Jesus and 1,000 manuscripts that says Lord, this is one, we consider this as one variant, only one. Okay? So he says, it's not like that, like people think it is. So now, how many corruptions then, taking his methodology, how many corruptions do you think, how many variants do you think are in the text of the New Testament manuscripts? How many? If you had to guess. Guess.
I don't know.
Just give a guess,
I won't guess.
Come on, anybody can guess.
No sense. I don't know. It makes no sense for me to guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you. He says 400 to 500,000. Let me repeat that again. 400 to 500,000. Okay? So he says for each word in the New Testament, we have 2.5 times number of corruptions. For each word in the New Testament, we have like nearly 2.5 times corruptions in the manuscripts. Okay? 400 to 500,000. Then he categorizes corruptions because not all corruptions are the same. So he says corruptions that change the meaning. Okay? So meaningful corruptions versus corruptions that are not meaningful. Remember the message, the creed, what you were saying, huh? So now the changes that actually change the meaning versus corruptions that don't change the meaning. Okay? So he says we categorize them into corruptions that change the meaning and corruptions that don't change the meanings. And we categorize them into changes that are viable. Essentially, maybe they represent the text of what Mark says, because everything goes back to Mark. So he says that if they're viable, then they're likely to represent what Mark said. Whoever wrote Mark, which we don't know, whatever that text that was written 70 years after Jesus or so, Whatever was written there, it is likely that this is what was written. That's what viable means, okay? So now, let's talk about the corruptions and the changes that are non-viable but meaningful. He says, significantly change the meaning. Not just a small change, or no, significant change in meaning. How many of the 400 to 500,000 do you think that we have meaningful corruptions of the Bible that are non-viable?
Again, I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
Over 25%. Essentially, more than 125,000 corruptions in the Bible that significantly change the meaning.
The meaning of words, or the meaning of the whole story?
The meaning of the text. Yeah, the meaning of the text. It's like, for instance, instead of saying, I worship God, I put Judas. I worship Judas. Like, I'm at this one word. But he says, I'm sorry, but he says the corruptions are not one word. He says up to 12 verses. By the way, I'm going to help you by giving you examples of the corruptions, right? So I can even help you further to show you what these types of corruptions, to bring the idea closer to you. When we say there is no way you can know what the beliefs are, what Jesus said, Jesus didn't say, because what you have in your hand is a book filled with corruptions. Now, even the changes that are meaningful but viable, meaning they're likely, in his belief, they're likely to present the original text. By the way, this is a conservative scholar. So Bart Ehrman will completely disagree. He says there's no way you can even restore anything of the origin. Okay, that would be his position. But I'm bringing you someone who believes that there is a chance you can do it. Okay, he believes that there is at least 5,000 variants. But this is, by the way, he's just dumbing down the number as much as possible. But he says 5,000, said from 1 word to 12 verses, changes that are viable. So if we have 5,000 changes that are viable, there's no way we could know, significantly change the meaning. There's no way we could know what the original is saying. It's impossible. It's impossible, because if we have all of these changes that are corrupted, there are changes that could be represented in the text, then nobody knows what the text was saying. Okay? So, what are examples of these changes? I give you an example. I said to you, Mark, the ending of Mark. Do you know the ending of Mark? We have like different manuscripts showing different endings of the Gospel of Mark, right?
Okay.
Now, the ending of the Gospel of Mark, which is Mark chapter 16, basically, starting from verse 8, verses 9 to 20, okay? All of these verses are a corruption. So if you go, even if you pick up your Bible, I don't know which Bible you read, but if you go to the notes, they'll tell you that these don't exist, these are corruption, don't exist in the earliest manuscripts, okay? Now, verses from 9 to 20, do you know what they say? You want to say something, it seems.
No, I'm looking it up. So you said 16 from the verse 9.
Yeah. 9 to 20. Depends. Some Bibles don't even have it. They completely removed it, yeah? But many Bibles have it, and they have notes and whatever. It depends on which Bible you're reading. Now, these verses from 9 to 20, they talk about very important creedal beliefs. Remember, change of the meaning, change of the creed. They talk about the ascension. They talk about the disciples eating food and doing miracles and not eating poison and not dying. Talks about Jesus being sent to the entire world, right? Talks about him sitting on the right hand of the Father. All of these are big theological beliefs, creedal beliefs. Yeah.
I understand. Sorry, I think you're freezing. Can you hear me?
No, I'm not freezing. I'm waiting for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you happy for me to jump in for a bit? Because obviously you've been going on for a bit. And I was trying to respectfully, let you make the case. It's just that we can be here 1 hour just on this topic alone. But you well know there are different approaches that we can take. So you're trying to prove the corruption of the Bible. Now, this is the issue that I've seen when I'm trying to learn about these things, because you are an educated guy and you do this for a living, I guess. And I wouldn't be able to give you all the answers that you would want, or to answer all of your questions. The only thing is, like, somebody else on a Christian side, right, can take the same position and make very good arguments. Like, you have other people who it would seem that, okay, he has a different way of responding to this. So what would you do with scholars that contradict the examples that you give? Because I know there are many other scholars that are in the favor of the writings of the Bible, and you can name few, but when you have so many, and that's why I think that the majority, they they agree that the text can be reliable. Yeah, it might not be exact in everything, but when you make the case, obviously you use words like, corruption and contradiction and all that to make it, which is, it sounds good if you make it based on your case. But what I found out, right, because I'm not going to be able to give you all the answer that you're probably looking for, but what I found out is, like, if you take all the good arguments against Christianity or all the good arguments against Islam, right, I'm only saying that just so I can explain my position, right? I find I'm not able to fully say Christianity, it's 100% when it comes down to text, to everything, all the arguments, they are perfect. But I know the exact same thing can be said about Islam as well. So what do I have? So after all this year of research, in as much as I can, I put them side by side. I was like, well, let me consider Christianity. If Christianity is true based on what it claims, or if Islam is true based on what it claims, I still believe the story of the Bible to me makes more sense and it's more beautiful. And now, just a quick side note to what you're trying to say. You're trying to prove the corruption of the Bible, but we know historically we have people outside of the Bible that had nothing to do with Christianity or being Christians, that their writings, we have writings of people talking about this group of Christians who are dying because they believed in this man, Jesus, right, who he claimed he was the Son of God, and they actually believed it, and they died for it. And this is not, it doesn't come down to the corruption of the Bible. It's outside sources. So to me, what you're trying to say, it doesn't disprove the writings of the Bible completely. I do believe that on the very fundamental teachings of the Bible, which is Jesus claimed he's the Son of God, and you had people believing that, and they were ready to die for it. I think that part is true. Now, you might be right in some of the things that you say. It doesn't disprove the whole case of Christianity. And this is my question. If the main elements of Christianity are true, then everything else seems to make sense.
Okay, so you're done, right? I'm gonna respond to with all due respect, you just gave me a word salad. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say it to you the way say it to you the way it is, right? Number one, first, you said I'm trying to prove the corruption of the Bible, and I already answered that point for you. And I told you this is not my words. I quoted to you Daniel B. Wallace's words. So you said to me, I'm not a scholar. There are scholars who talk about. So I went and I brought you your scholars that defend the Bible, what they say. Then you somehow said, "Oh, you're trying to prove the corruption of the Bible." It's not me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry with all due respect, my friend. It's not my fault that your book is corrupted. I mean, I'm not the one who corrupted it. I'm sorry to say. I'm not the one who's sitting down there and corrupted and changing. It was your scribes, okay? So when Daniel B. Wallace, your Christian scholars that are supposed to defend your Bible, talking to you about the leading world-renowned textual criticism scholars of Christianity that are conservative, the attempt to save Christianity. They are the ones who say corruption. They are the ones who say the scribes were intentionally changing. They are the ones who say you have over 125,000 corruptions that are meaningful, that significantly change the meaning. They are the ones who say these things. It's not me, my friend. So I'm sorry you're trying to blame me for it, but it's not me. It's your scholars. Now, what you can do right now, if you don't believe me, you can go on AI right now and say, who are the scholars that defend the Bible, for example? Mention names to me. Go. You will find the names I gave you are the names that are out there. You're not going to find other names. You're not going to find scholars of textual criticism that study the manuscript that contradict what I told you. Not a single one. Because you said there are other scholars on the other side that make different arguments. No, that's false. I'm bringing you the scholars on your side. That's why I said to you, if I go to Bart Ehrman, his argument is that you don't have this idea of viable text where you can perhaps have this subjective idea of tracing what the original might have said. He doesn't accept this idea, which is the right position anyways. Because Daniel B. Wallace, even though he's saying all of this, he tried to patch up the work somehow. He knows that he's just like doing this word salad, trying to save Christianity somehow. Because he's a Christian. So I'm bringing you the people. So I'm bringing you, just to finish what I'm saying, I'm bringing you the people on your side. So there's no good arguments and bad arguments. And if I go on this side, I'm going to hear arguments. And if I go, no. And then you say you spent years of research. If you spend years of research, I'm sorry, you're going to know what the manuscripts are. You're going to know, for example, when I asked you what's the earliest manuscripts, you know that the Codex Sinaiticus is the earliest manuscripts you have of the full New Testament. You're going to know that the earliest fragment you have is a P52, as big as a card, comes from the 2nd century. That you would know that from the first 150 years of Christianity, you have 0 manuscripts, nothing, nada, 0, zilch, nothing. You got nothing. You got nothing to do from anywhere near the life of Jesus or what he said. You would know that your own church fathers, like the Origin of Alexandria, who is the first father of textual criticism, by the way, who is a church father, Origin of Alexandria, the one who invented this field, he was saying himself that at his time, the corruption in the manuscript was so widespread because of the arrogance of the scribes. They were changing left and right. He's talking in his time. The guy's in the 2nd century, 2nd, 3rd century. He's telling you at his time, there was already the corruption was so far and wide. So when you come and say now, when you come and talk about the Quran and say the same is going to apply in the Quran, there is one of 2 options. Number 1, you've studied what the Quran says, or number 2, you haven't studied what the Quran says. So I'm going to get back to the question I said to you before we move into the Quran. I asked you the question for that reason. I said to you, if the Bible was corrupted, I started with this idea, right? And I showed you how corrupted it is. I said to you, the corruptions are like 2.5 for each word in the New Testament. I said to you that over 25% of the corruptions are significantly changing the meaning. I said to you that one change ranges from 1 word to 12 verses. I gave you examples in your own book where the changes are significantly changing the meanings. You have full verses that complete the creed of the Trinity, which doesn't exist in the Bible, completely being added. For example, in 1 John 5:7, you have creeds being added about the adulterous woman and the sinless nature of Jesus, and not the importance of not following the law and stuff like that in Mark chapter 8. These are all creedal beliefs that changes your Bible. So you have a corrupted text. You have a corrupted text written by unknown anonymous authors. So the question again, I'm going to say the question again. How are you relying on this for your salvation? How are you not leaving Christianity when you agreed with me that if this was the case, you would leave Christianity?
Well, because like I said, what do I do with outside sources that agree with the main points of what Christianity is about? You have this guy, that claimed to be the Son of God. And then you have...
How do you know?
People.
How do you know he claimed to be the Son of God? The Bible. You see, what you're missing right now. I'm sorry, what you're missing, my friend, is everything you think you're going to say now. No. Okay, where is the outside sources that says that Jesus came to be Son of God? Go ahead.
So you have people, contemporary or just immediately...
Tell me who.
This is why I'm telling you, right?
Did you hear what I said to you? Did you hear what I said? Okay, I'm sorry, but this is what I'm telling you. You don't know what you're talking about. I just said to you, there is 0 manuscripts from the first 150 years after the death of Jesus. 0 manuscripts. Search it up right now. Search it up right now.
I know there is... I don't know them by name. That's why I said that the research that I've done, obviously, I've done it as an amateur. I'm not a...
no worries. Go ahead. Mention whoever you want. I'm happy to deal with whatever you're going to bring.
So I've heard some of these names before. So the Tacitus, Josephus.
Eusebius and Tacitus, the earliest manuscripts we have of them are hundreds of years after Jesus. Here. Earliest manuscripts, here, Eusebius, 411, 462, here. Okay? It's not my words. The earliest surviving manuscripts of any work by Eusebius. This is any work. I'm not sure if this is the specific work that mentions Jesus to begin with, okay? So, and for his most famous work, probably the one that is talking about Jesus, the early church or whatever, is 462. I know truth can be difficult to accept and can hurt, but truth is truth and facts is facts, okay? So, now Eusebius, even if we were to accept your claim, by the way, which the work of Eusebius and Tacitus, there is a lot of claims about it being forgeries. But I'm accepting that they're not even forgeries. I'm like, I'm going to be nice and accept these forgeries. These guys are historians. You know what historians do? Historians record what people are generally saying. Now, you realize when historians record hearsay, That's not proof that actually Jesus claimed these things. It's only proof that this was circulating around at the time of Eusebius, now, which we're saying around 70, like an entire generation after Jesus. This was what was circulating among certain people. Now, you said that they talk about the Son of God, for example. But the Son of God doesn't prove anything, because everybody's called the Son of God in the Bible. It doesn't prove your theology. Your theology is not based on the fact that Jesus is the Son of God. Because Son of God, Adam is called the Son of God. David is called the Son of God. Begotten Son of God, actually, in Psalms 2:7. They're all called, everybody's called the sons of God. The New Testament says, blessed be the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Everybody's a son of God in the Bible, Anybody, any believer is essentially a child of God in the Christian belief. So even if we were to take this idea that he recorded the idea of the Son of God, it doesn't prove your belief. It doesn't prove your faith.
Obviously, and I'm sure you are aware of it, like the whole writings of New Testament put Jesus as being called a Son of God in a divine way.
I was just talking to you about the corruption of the New Testament. You said external sources. Now you're back to the corrupted New Testament, but it's not a reliable historical text.
No, but you brought the argument.
I was talking to you about the corruption of the New Testament. You were like, I believe because there's external sources. Then we said, okay, I asked you, where's the external sources? You were like, I don't know, let me search. You went to Eusebius Fantasticus, which we know about, which you refuted multiple times before. I showed you how these are not proof. Then you went back to the New Testament. Come on, my friend. I mean, you gotta be honest with me over here, right? We cannot go in a circle. We've already dealt with the New Testament. It's a corrupted scripture written by anonymous, unknown sources, corrupted to a crazy extent. So if it is the case that it is corrupted, we cannot trust. I said to you, how do you know what Jesus said? You're about to tell me again what Jesus said, but you have no clue what Jesus said. You have something 400 years later, which is a recycled writings of corruptions to crazy extents, according to your own scholars and manuscripts, by the way, which you can look at yourself. I can even give you, by the way, books which shows you the transcripts of the manuscripts, right? And then it shows you the contradictions in the manuscripts. So, for example, the United Biblical Society, the 5th edition, the Nestle Allen 28. What they do is they show you the manuscripts. They show you the transcript of the manuscript. Ignore now what any scholar says. They bring the manuscript itself. They show you the wording of the manuscript, and then they show you the contradiction. If you open these books, I told you, nearly in every page, they will show you corruptions, contradictions between manuscripts that significantly change the meaning. And by the way, this is a Christian organization. These are your own people, my friend. I'm sorry. The problem is, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you.
So when you say it's a Christian organization, so that means for them to be Christian organization, that means they still believe in the main teachings of what Christianity is about, and they do look into some of the details that they find, right? So they might be like.
Have you heard of the term blind faith before?
I did, yeah.
Okay, that's the definition of blind faith. You admit this is what I'll tell you what Daniel B. Wallace does. I'll tell you what he does in his lectures. But you got to keep in mind, a lot of these people have sponsors, my friend. They have sponsors. They need to say that which their sponsors want to hear, right? So, they need to say that which the people. They need to say that which the people want to hear. You had someone like, by the way, Daniel B. Wallace. He lied before, and he claimed that I have this manuscript from the 1st century. He completely made up a lie about having a manuscript. And then he was exposed later as a liar. He says, I have it, and it's going to be a crazy finding and whatever. And he was lying. There was no such manuscript. So these people will say whatever fits, whatever fills their pocket. Okay? So now, when you talk about these people, what they say and what they don't say, what Daniel B. Wallace does is this. He starts a lecture, and then he says, we have tens of thousands of manuscripts. So many manuscripts talking about the New Testament, and he keeps talking about the number of the manuscripts, all of that. Then he ends up saying, after he goes over all that, it's not about the number of the manuscript, but it's about the accuracy of the manuscripts is what matters. But you just destroyed everything you were saying for the lecture for 40, 50 minutes. Why was he starting the lecture with this? He wants to give the Christian a sense of confidence, Look, we have so many manuscripts and tens of thousands talking about the life of Jesus, but the thing is, when you start talking to Daniel B. Wallace about reality now, at the manuscripts, how much corruptions are in there, to what extent are they corrupted, to what extent do they contradict each other, right? How many of these changes are meaningful or viable? Then he tells us the reality now, that anybody with any reasoning and common sense is not going to accept. The problem with Christians of today is the overwhelming majority, I would say 99%, if not more, of Christians have no clue about textual criticism. They have no clue about the extent of the corruption of the biblical manuscripts. All they know is two things. Oh, it's different translations, not different Bibles. No, it's not different translations, I've read. It's different corruptions between them. But this is the lies that they've been sold. This is what the lay people will tell you if you speak to them. Or they think, oh, the changes are like I told you, the word Jesus and the word Lord and things which are not important that don't change the meaning. No, my friend. Or there's scribal errors. A scribe was writing, but he made a mistake, and we have other manuscripts that correct the mistake. No. Scribes were intentionally, Daniel B. Wallace tells you that they were intentionally, they found contradictions between, for example, Matthew and Mark. So they intentionally changed so they can remove any contradiction between the two texts. So they were doing intentional changes for religious beliefs and purposes. Now, my question is going to be, again, how would anybody believe in something like this after all of this corruption? How?
Well, what I was going to ask you earlier, it's the reason why I still believe is because what you're doing right now, I've been exposed to, let's say, wanting to find out what Islam is about as well. Wanting to find out how reliable it is historically. When it comes down to the whole. So
do you want to talk? Is what you're trying to do now? Is talk about Islam? No. Do you want to talk about Islam?
What I'm trying to do now is present you, let's say, my situation, and how, based on how you present the situation, right? It put me in a place where somebody, let's say, on Islam side, just like you are doing right now, right, presents all these arguments against Christianity and why it's not reliable. But then I've seen, in a similar way, somebody doing the same about Islam.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Tell me.
And there are good and bad arguments.
I'm going to ask you this question. Okay, here. What I did with you, I challenge you now or any Christian to do. Go bring me a single conservative Muslim scholar of manuscripts that says the Quran has been corrupted. One. I didn't bring you one. I brought you the world leading foremost scholars in defense of the Bible, and I brought you three. I brought you the people in the forefront of defense. You bring me one Muslim scholar.
Here's my confusion.
Muslim scholar that says that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll have to do more research when it comes down to this, because I've heard too many, let's say, good arguments for Christianity, and I heard too many, let's say, good arguments for Islam, and too many bad arguments for Christianity, and too many bad arguments for Islam. So this is what I've seen. It's like, so it puts me in a position in which, I'm sorry, but you keep saying this in a way, and we already responded to this idea, because it's not me here coming and bringing you arguments against Christianity, and if you go to a different guy, he's going to give you arguments about Islam. No, I'm here presenting you what the Christians themselves say about their own religion, what the experts who are defending their own book say about their own religion. So it's not a Muslim making an argument about Christianity, and if you go to a Christian, he's going to make up an argument about Islam. I didn't say that.
But no, you're presenting it in a way where you make it seem that, like, there's so many people making so many arguments, it's very hard to tell what the truth is. I'm telling you, no. When you look at the evidences, you study the evidences, you investigate the evidences, it is not the case. Because, for example, you tell me you heard many great evidences for Christianity, right? Mention one.
Well, like I said, I still think until I'm going to do a bit more research based on what you said, right? And some of the videos. Can you not tell me?
Can you not tell me what we already refuted? But give me an argument. Something has not been refuted in this discussion. Give me an evidence that Christianity is the truth that I haven't already refuted right now in our discussion. One evidence.
Well, I don't feel like you refuted it just yet, because I need to go and do more research about it. I still believe that historically, and I'm not saying like you make the argument and I'm passing it on you. No, when I said good arguments is that I've heard good Christian people making good arguments for Christianity. Now you gave me some of them, which they make some bad arguments for it because of like the textual corruption and all that. So in as far as I was concerned, in as far as I thought, I was quite confident that historically we have a good case for the writings of Christianity. So
okay, I'm sorry. I mean, if after this entire discussion you say I haven't disproven that's crazy. Okay.
I mean,
okay,
you said stuff.
Yeah, no, I didn't say stuff. I gave you manuscript evidence. I quoted to you verses in the Bible. I quoted to you books which have the transcriptions of the manuscripts. So no, I didn't say stuff. Sorry, I presented evidence. On the other hand, what have you presented? You don't even know the earliest manuscript of the New Testament. So what have you presented? You say you believe something, but you have I'm sorry, you literally have nothing to prove for what you claim is the most important evidence for you to believe in what you believe in.
No, I didn't.
You gotta work with me here, my friend. You gotta.
I didn't come really here with. I'm not a scholar or like historian when it comes down to this, right? Again, I just expose myself to these arguments. I cannot recall them, so I can present them right now.
Okay, so you're saying there's so many arguments, but you cannot recall them. Okay, at this point, I think my case is made. Now you are talking about Islam, right? I'm gonna stop putting you, on the spot now. I think you've done enough of demolishing the idea of Christianity. So I'm gonna let you now ask about Islam, right? You were curious about Islam. You need to say something about Islam. What do you ask? Whatever you want. I'll show you the difference when you talk about presenting evidences between Islam and Christianity. Go ahead, ask whatever you like.
What I probably should have done, because I was on my way. I came home, and probably I should have done a bit of homework, and I could have come a bit more prepared when it comes to arguments or questions that I could have addressed you, because like I said from the beginning, I don't necessarily have questions. I just came here because like I said, I wanted to keep my promise to my friend, and again, I've heard arguments, and I heard arguments made against Islam, and I guess I can try and address some of them if I remember some of them. But I don't know how much that would help, like right now. So it's either like I'll take some time to do some more research about the stuff that you mentioned, and obviously I did some in the past. A lot of it I have to like keep reminding myself of. But that's why from the beginning, because like from a while ago, I've tried to say, it's almost like none of them have the power to convince me anymore. I am a quite confident Christian, because genuinely I wanted to understand the good arguments for Islam and the good arguments, and I think I've got to the point in which, well, everybody seems to have the good argument. Let's say both sides are true, but just a way of considering if the story of Christianity is true or the story of Islam is true. I got to the point where I just put myself in this situation. I was like, the Christian story makes more sense, and I think that's how I chose to go ahead with it. Plus, again, there are some arguments in which I have a problem with. Now, I'm sure, again, there are good arguments for it, but when it comes down to Islam, I know, let's say, if we take the approach of the historical corruption, I know one of the arguments is being used that, again, I won't remember any names, but on some point in history, somebody destroyed, because there are different versions of the Quran, and somebody, right, destroyed the other variations of the Quran, so there is only one available. And from then, again, I'm not ready to make the argument. I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Okay, look, I'm sorry about this. Again, with all respect, you ended up saying the same thing, which is a cope. It's a cope for you to stay on what you're on right now. It's not a position of a sincere person. You came back again. All these people have arguments. I already refuted that. You said it multiple times. You repeated it, and I told you keep repeating the same thing, but it is not true, because what we can do is we can look at the evidences. The evidences don't lie. It's not that this guy has a good argument, this guy has a good argument. You can have whatever argument you want. But when you go back to the text, when you go back to the proofs, when you go back to the manuscripts, there is no lies there. So a sincere person, when he sees his own experts and his own scholars, the ones on his side and the one against him, all agreeing that the manuscripts are all corrupted, are all changed, are all so significantly corrupted and changed, you're not going to come and say, oh, this guy has an argument, because it's the foundation of the entire faith. If the book is corrupted, then nothing else matters. The story is based on the book. Jesus' entire existence and beliefs and what he did, what he didn't do is based on the book. Everything is based on the book. If the book is extremely corrupted, extremely changed, then none of this matters anymore. So it's all a position of sincerity and actually being a person of truth. We have this statement from one of the scholars. He said that the person of truth is enough for him one evidence, but the person of desire, it doesn't matter if you give him 1,000 evidence. He's just following his desires. It doesn't matter. Oh, look, I'll bring you 1,000,000 evidence that Christianity is false and Islam is the truth. But yeah, you know what? Some other people, I don't have the arguments, but there are other people out there making better arguments than you know? And there are other people there who have the answers. I don't have them. I don't know them. But there is some guy out there in some other universe, in some multiverse, and some alien planet has the answers to it. What? If anybody can do this, anybody can do this. So long as you don't present any proof, like you wanted to talk about Islam. Somebody somewhere did something. You see the difference between when I talked about your book, I gave you the earliest manuscripts. I gave you the names of the manuscripts. I gave you the names of the church fathers. I gave you the numbers of the verses that are corrupted. I gave you the names of the textual criticism scholars that you have. I gave you the names of the books that contains the transcripts. I give you the number of changes. I quoted to you verbatim what these scholars say. There's a difference between that and someone who says, I've heard something somewhere, and this was a convincing argument for me. This is one of the strongest arguments. So what you're talking about, let me respond to what you were saying anyways, which you haven't said, okay? Now, the Prophet Muhammad, let me summarize to you this idea. Prophet Muhammad did not read or write. As a majority of the people, by the way, in that time, people 1,400 years ago, especially in Arabia, were not literate people generally, right? This was not there. They were not schools and institutions and whatever. So it wasn't like that Prophet Muhammad alone was like this. That was the majority of the community. Anyways, so Prophet Muhammad did not read or write. But the Quran was revealed in 23 years. Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad in 23 years. Every time a verse was revealed of the Quran, Prophet Muhammad brought one of his companions to write it down instantly in his life. The entire Quran was written down. Who wrote it down? We have the names of the writers of Revelation. Over 50 companions. We have Uthman ibn Affan, we had Zayd ibn Thabit, we have Ali ibn Abi Talib. I can go on and on. I give you who these people were. What was the relationship to Prophet ﷺ, the lineage, tracing back to Ishmael. I'll give you the lineage. When were they born? When did they die? Who are these people? I'll give you all of this. They were writing down the revelation directly when it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. When Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passed away, the entire Quran was written down, of course, in whatever they had. They had parchments, they had, leather pieces, rocks, whatever they had, they could write on in that time. They wrote the Quran on. So the entire Quran was written down. Now, at the time of Abu Bakr, the first caliph, who was like around 3 years only, he only stayed 3 years after the Prophet and he passed away. Right after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he compiled all of these writings of the Quran. The original written Quran in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he compiled it together. And he didn't only do this. Even though Abu Bakr himself, he memorized the full Quran. Yeah? And there was thousands of memorizers of the Quran. He still said, we're going to bring witnesses for each verse. 2 witnesses for every verse. 2 witnesses that they heard this verse from the Prophet ﷺ directly. They already memorized it. This is just to show the people the level of the extent of preservation that Muslims go to. Okay? So, they compiled this Quran, this entire book written in leathers and form and all of these different things. Okay? Now, you had some Muslims who had their own personal books, companions who had their own personal masahif, who wrote the Quran in them. They wrote their interpretation, they wrote their exegesis and stuff like that. Okay? Does that make sense? Are you with me so far? So we have the Quran collected, and we have these companions writing their own interpretations, understanding, and stuff like that. So we have these manuscripts there. Now, these remain after the death of Abu Bakr. The second caliphate of Islam comes, Umar al-Khattab, they remain. And then the third caliph comes, Uthman ibn Affan. And Islam spread far and wide. You know how much Islam spread, of course. How fast and how wide Islam spread in the beginning, in the first early years. So there were so many new people accepting Islam. So now, there are people reading the Quran, there's people making mistakes, new converts of Islam making mistakes in the Quran, and people disagreeing with each other because, they're far away from the mainland, right? They're far away from where the revelation was sent out. So what Uthman ibn Affan did, he said, let's collect now all the manuscripts of the Quran, the extra manuscripts, not the original ones that I told you is written down. Remember these original ones? They were kept. He collected all the personal masahif, personal books of the companions. He collected any other manuscripts other than the original. And he said, by the way, at that time, we're talking about like nearly 30 years after the Prophet ﷺ, Islam spread everywhere. The Quran is memorized already by hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Even if Uthman wanted to corrupt it, he can't. It's already spread everywhere. There is no way that he can change the text anymore. You understand? It's done. The text is spread everywhere in the hearts of the Muslims. We're talking about nearly 30 years after the Prophet ﷺ. So what he did is, he said, okay, let's bring all the extra manuscripts. We don't want people to get confused later on and confuse the Quran with exegesis and interpretation or any of these things. Okay? So we are going to burn all of these extra manuscripts. We're going to keep the original, which we have it, which is preserved, and then we're going to standardize it. We're going to make it in a book form, because I told you it was in leather and rocks and stuff like that. And then he made copies of it, around 6 copies. He sent it to all the different Muslim regions. So now people can go back to this. This is the original you go back to, right? So the new Muslim, you're making mistakes. This is here. It's the original you can go back to, so you do not make any mistakes. Okay? And he sent with every one of them a teacher. With these masahif, he sent a teacher. So you can recite the Quran. People can know the exact recitation so they don't make mistakes. So everybody can learn the truth and know the truth the right way. Okay? And the original ones, did Uthman burn them after? No. They actually stayed like nearly 30 years after Uthman. The time of one of the kings, Malik ibn Marwan. At his time, it was burned. Right? 30 years later, after all the Quran's already spread in the regions and all of that and this and that. Okay? So, this is the history of the Islamic text. Okay? But the most important thing is we don't rely on manuscripts anyways. Even though we have this mushaf for Uthman, this mushaf that we're talking about, we have carbon-dated manuscripts from the 1st century. We have the Sana'a manuscripts, which is 15,000 different parchments that trace back to 950 different Qur'ans from the 1st century onwards. We have the top copy manuscript. We have the Sana'a manuscripts that I'm telling you about. We have parchments from the life of the Prophet himself, the Birmingham manuscript, from the life of Prophet Muhammad himself. But we don't rely on written books. We don't rely on written manuscripts. We rely on oral memorization, which doesn't exist in any other religion. At the time of Abu Bakr, there was a battle called the Battle of Yamama, where you had thousands of reciters dying, thousands of memorizers of the Quran, because there were already thousands of memorizers of people who memorized the Quran from beginning to end. And this tradition is, today we have millions, and we have certificates which goes back to the Prophet Muhammad. The name of your teacher, of his teacher, going back to the Prophet Muhammad. Millions of certificates, millions of memorizers. You can never corrupt this text. No, even if we don't have a single manuscript, nobody can corrupt this text. If you burn all of them, we'll bring it in a minute because it's in the memory. So this is what Islam is in comparison to any other faith and any other religion. That's why I told you, if Islam is even 1%, that manuscripts of the Quran is 1% as corrupt as the biblical manuscripts, I wouldn't be a Muslim. For people of evidences, I am basing my salvation on this. When I die on the day of judgment, if a man is telling me what to believe, then God's going to put me in the fire because I followed man's work, not God's work. I worshipped other than God. So yeah, this is the simple answer to the. By the way, this is a complete breakdown to the point that you were making. What else? You're welcome. Do you have any other arguments, strong arguments against Islam? You're welcome to say.
No, I won't take too much of your time. I already took a lot of your time, so I'm not sure. I just wanted to mention something, because earlier you were making the case, because when you're talking about the fact that if I don't have some of the arguments, it's as if, let's say, I'm not basing my faith or on anything. I kind of like put myself in the position of a Muslim.
I'm not saying that.
Right?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying if you don't have all the arguments. I'm saying if you don't look at the evidence. You understand the difference between an argument and evidence? For example, there's many. I have an entire series of my channels called Clip React, where I react to Christians and atheists and all of that. And I highlight how they lie. But how do we know they lie? we go back to the written text, right? So, for example, they misquote the Quran. You go back to the verse, you see that this person is lying. The verse doesn't say what this person is saying it says. You understand? The Prophet did this. You go to the source, you realize that it's a lie. Okay? They make up an argument, but they don't mention to you the entire corpus of the context of how the incident happened and whatever, all the other narrations that talks about it. So when you go back to the evidences, it's not about people's arguments. It's not about people's eloquence. Some is not true because I know how to talk, or my friend knows how to talk, or my uncle knows how to talk, or how many books I read. It is true because when you go back to the evidences, you realize that the text is corrupted. So when I tell you, for example, and last thing I'm going to say, when I tell you, for example, that you have these Christian defenders of the Bible admitting to these corruptions, we have non-Muslims scholars that admit the Quran is preserved. So it's not just that I can easily bring you Muslims that say the Quran is preserved, but I even go to the extent of bringing you non-Muslims that say the Quran is preserved. You see the difference? The difference is in your tradition, your own scholars admit to the corruption. In our case, I can bring you names of scholars who say the Quran is preserved from manuscript tradition they talk about. But we don't even need to rely on the manuscripts.
Well, I always thought that there are atheists and other scholars out there who agree and they agree. We like historically the text of the Bible can be reliable. That's why I said you have.
What do you mean by reliable? What do you mean by reliable?
Like it can historically be that it's accurate.
It's not corrupted. There's no corruptions in the manuscript. There's not a single scholar. I believe there's not a single textual criticism scholar that says there's no corruption in the biblical Greek manuscripts. There's not one.
I will have to look it up better then.
Go ahead.
No, I'll take my time.
Do it. No worries. By the way, I have also a video on this. I have also a video on this, right? It's the Christian dilemma video where I bring you the quotes of Daniel Wallace, where I bring you the books, where I talk about the transcriptions and the manuscripts. I bring his own video where he's telling you what I was telling you. You're welcome to watch that video as well on my channel.
Mm-hmm. I'll do it. What I was trying to say earlier is like if a Muslim, right, who it's on, let's say on my level, he goes to the mosque or he's trying to be a good Muslim, but he's in a conversation with a Christian that, let's say a more educated Christian, and then the Christian brings argument. Let's say those arguments are false. He doesn't know yet, right? But the Muslim guy cannot answer. He doesn't have the answers, or he doesn't know all the arguments. Would you then say to that Muslim that, well, you should leave that faith because obviously you don't have the argument, you don't rely on evidence, even though he doesn't know the Christian guy might lie?
Great question.
I just wanted to say, like, you kind of like put me in that position just because I'm not ready to answer at the same level you are.
So I'm not telling you to leave Christianity now. That's why I said to you, if it is the case, you should leave Christianity. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying, it's a great question. Now the answer to it, that Muslim, if he goes and researches and he realizes that when I say researches, I mean fact checks what this person says. If he truly goes and realizes the world leading textual criticism scholars and manuscript scholars of Muslims, all of them say the Quran has been corrupted and to this extent, word for word, then of course he shouldn't be a Muslim. 100% he should leave his faith. Mm-hmm. That is my answer to you. Mm-hmm. I should, if it was me, I'll do the same. So it's not about being put on the spot, because that's why when I was talking to you, I was like, research it up in front of you. You have I said to you, search the information in front of you, right? I let you search who Daniel B. Wallace is. I let you search who Bruce Metzger is. I let you search who Philip Comfort is. In fact, right now, I can play you the clip of Daniel B. Wallace himself saying that all the manuscripts of the Bible are corrupt. It's in my video. I play it. So it's not. So you see, it's not about, I gotta go back and find out if you're telling me the truth or not. No, it is the truth, right?
I put like if the scholars of the Bible think the text is corrupted, and it says here, most scholars of the Bible do not think the text is corrupted, while critical scholarship acknowledges that the thousands of surviving manuscript copies contain hundreds and thousands of differences, largely due to human scribal errors over centuries. The overwhelming consensus in that the Bible has been remarkably well preserved.
But
scholars generally agree that these variants are minor and do not compromise the essential message, doctrines, and historical narrative.
Okay, sure. So you just read a contradiction. So AI now is copying from the Christian websites that claims what I was just telling you. So it literally says, even though there's tens of thousands of corruptions, the message is still the same. But it makes the lie that I already refuted, which is that these are scribal errors. And then I gave you proof from Daniel Wallace and others that say these are not mere scribal errors. So now you can ask AI, what is the name of the scholars that say, right, that these corruptions that you talk about are just merely scribal errors, are not intentional? Which name one scholar that says that? Textual criticism scholar.
So what are the names of scholars?
Look, is there any Christian textual criticism scholars that says that there is no corruption in biblical manuscripts? Okay. In the field of textual criticism, the term corruption is a technical label for any change, whether a simple error or a deliberate theological edit. These that deviates from the original text. Because of thousands of variants exists across the surviving manuscripts, no modern scholar claims there is zero corruption in a sense of a perfect, uniform, error-free manuscript tradition. Instead, conservative Christian scholars argue while that there are corruptions, variants that exist, they are not material or willful enough to change Christian doctrine. And then he quotes who? These scholars emphasize the reliability. Who's the first person? Daniel B. Wallace. Who's the second person? Bruce Mesker.
I agree. So, like I said, I think it doesn't change the main doctrine.
I didn't make up AI. I didn't make up AI.
But do you agree?
Do you agree? Meta. Yes.
Do you agree that this doesn't change? So he mentioned that it doesn't change the main doctrinal teachings of the Bible.
Sorry?
Do you agree?
I already told you. I already told you. No, of course I told you no, because of the evidence. So then we have to look at the evidence. They make that claim that it doesn't change the creed of Christianity. But then when we look at the evidence, they tell us the manuscript corruptions, for example, right? Then I give you examples. I tell you the ending of Mark. Does the ending of Mark, is it a corruption related to doctrine, or is it a corruption not related to doctrine? We look at it and we realize that it's a corruption related to doctrine. It is the idea of the ascension. It is Jesus sitting on the right hand of the Father. It is Christians doing miracles. We look at John chapter 8. We look at 1 John 5:7, which is the Trinity, basically, put in the Bible because it doesn't exist. We look at what I said to you, the Nestle Aland and the 5th edition. When you look at these corruptions and you compare them, you realize, no, they are actually changing theological beliefs.
So these are some of the things added, and that stuff with the Trinity, I don't believe in Trinity anyway, but even those things that you just mentioned, there are few things along so many others that if they are there in the first place, like there's so many evidence in the other side.
You're missing the point. You don't have an original. So if we have no original, and what we already have examples of creedal corruption, then you cannot come up with a creed. Do you understand? It's a very simple idea. I told you the earliest full manuscript you have is 400 years after Jesus, my friend. 400 years. So you cannot come and say, like Daniel B. Wallace claims, that it doesn't change the creed, because you don't know what the creed is. You have nothing written from the earliest sources. All you have is the manuscripts. The manuscripts show corruptions of creed and meaning. If they already show examples of corruptions of creed and meaning, how can you at the same time claim that there's no change in the creed? How?
Yeah, that's a legit question. I'll have to,
That's why I'm telling you. They tell you what you want to hear, but it doesn't matter what buzzwords they want to hear. When we look at the evidence, it's just like hypocrisy. So they can sell more revised standard editions and NIVs and whatever Bibles that they want to sell.
Right.
Okay, you see, look. Anyways, like I think I've done more than I can do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking the time, and obviously all the arguments you presented. I actually, do appreciate it. It made me realize, I wanna study more about this stuff, and I always had this approach in which if the evidence leads to whatever the evidence leads, I want to follow.
I ask Allah to guide you, and hopefully people benefited from it in the end. All right.
No, I always appreciated your patience, you know, and yeah, I'm glad you took the time to have the conversation. So
no worries, no worries. May Allah guide you in the end. It's all for the sake of truth in the end. All right. May Allah guide you, and pleasure talking to you. Bye bye. See you.
Thanks. Same.